I think it's very important that we need to share or teach our kids at an early age. If we want things to end, if we want racism to stop, we need to start engaging in these conversations early on. I mean, what are your thoughts?
I'm gonna share another story. I like stories.
Yeah.
So one of my first, I think my first and second year of teaching, I taught in Maryland, taught Head Start. So my students this time were 3 and 4 years old. And I was reading them the traditional story of Goldilocks and the 3 bears, right? We all know the story. 3 bears, mama bear, papa bear, baby bear. Goldilocks goes in, essentially breaks in their house, eats their porridge, and breaks up their furniture. So I had an observation that
Which
day.
we don't talk about, by the way. She straight up breaking and entering, B&E.
Right?
That's 5 to 10. But anyway, I'm sorry, I cut you out. Go for it.
No, you're good. So I'm reading this. I'm reading, first or second year teaching. I'm doing the things. I'm asking the questions, and I was being observed by my principal. So my principal had my lesson. So I'm reading the story, asking them questions, and I get to the end of the book, and these 15 kids are looking at me. They just look real unhappy. And so I put the book down on my lap, and I was like, hey, I'm looking at your faces. You don't look happy. What's wrong? And one little girl says, we, as if they consulted with each other, we don't like this story. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is not supposed to happen. I'm being observed. Like, we don't like this story. And another child says, yeah, I don't like it. And so I asked why. Like, I'm flabbergasted. Like, why don't, like, what's up? And one child, I'll never forget, says, Goldilocks is mean. And I thought, like, oh my gosh, in this class, we talk a lot about kindness and being good and nice and being friends with each other. And so they were internalizing Goldilocks was mean. And one boy said, yeah, she went in their house, she broke their stuff, and she ate their food. That's not nice. And that just blew up my whole lesson. And I was like, all right. In that moment, I had to pivot. And we started, instead of what I had planned, we started talking about, well, what are some things the bears could have done to keep Goldilocks out? Answers were great. They need a gate. Goldilocks needs a whooping. Like, what you mean? Like, Goldilocks needs a whooping, right? And so I tell this story to say that is an opportunity for in developing children's criticality, as Dr. Gholdy Muhammad stated. That is helping children be able to interrogate the world around them, to actually look at social injustices, and not only just be able to name them, but to think and problem solve around them. So if we don't acknowledge that there are actual injustices, how can we actually not just navigate them, but work to transform and change them? Wow. And books are an opportunity for that to happen. That one little story, in reading Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, that helped my students to be able to understand, like, wait a minute, this was happening here with Goldilocks and these bears. I don't like it. Let's talk about how we can make sure this does not happen.
I like, because a lot of these books are these quote unquote classical books. We don't always think about, like, what is the story about? Some girl breaks into someone's house and eats their food, sleeps in their bed, and eats
children to us. I never looked at that story like that. Never. I was like, oh, this is so cute. I think it was part of my curriculum.
Yeah.
And I didn't look at it like that. And they were just like, no, ma'am, we don't like this.
So are you in favor of books that should have, like, some sort of moral to the story type of books, or are you more interested in representation and how things are represented in books?
Ooh, I think there's space for both. I think there's all different sorts of books. There are, of course, fiction, nonfiction. There are wordless picture books. There are repetitive books. There are informational texts. And I think children should be exposed to all forms of text. So they they're just not that they're just getting the exposure, but we can figure out, like, what do they actually like? Because, I'm sure you've encountered children who or adults, I don't like books. I don't like to read, right? And I think it boils down to have you found that one book that you like? I truly believe that children can develop a love and a joy for reading if they're exposed to different genres and different types of books, and books with different types of artwork and illustrations, right? But if they don't have that exposure to different types of books, they'll never be able to determine if, one, I truly don't like reading, or I just haven't found that one book or type of book that I like.